Hello and welcome to this video. Today we're going to be talking about professional data coaching. Now this channel's been around for quite some time. In fact, next year will mark the 10-year anniversary of putting up videos and tutorials on how to download your data, configure your devices and find insights and trends for improvement on track. Throughout that time, however, some of the key learnings that I've had in doing these videos is that different people see different insights in the data, and that some of the best people in terms of interpretation and finding those insights are professional data coaches who are oftentimes professional race car drivers and professional coaches. Now, for many of us, access to a professional coach has been something which has been very difficult to do. In fact, it's either been cost prohibitive or it's just the simple exercise of being able to say, hey, where am I going to go to be able to access somebody who may have won the 24 hours of Daytona or the 12 hours of Sebring? And so today, we're going to be talking about a service called Blayze. Now, about 2 or 3 months ago, Dion from Blayze reached out to me and said, are you interested in doing some cross-promotion? Because we think your audience on your channel will be really interested in the services that we provide from Blayze. As the conversation evolved, it looked really interesting. And so today's video is going to be talking about my experiences with Blayze, how to upload the video, what the quality of the analysis was, and the information that I got back, and really just looking at whether this is a service which is going to be applicable to you. Right, let's talk a little bit about Blayze. And at this point in the video, I think it's important that we mention that this is an affiliation this channel has with Blayze. So should you like what you see today and you follow the link below, there's a fantastic introductory offer that you can take advantage of. And if you do, I in turn will receive the opportunity of credits to use for coaching, which I'm really excited about because the more coaching I get, the better in terms of my racing career. Now, in many respects, I think it's important that we do talk about Blayze. And when I mentioned earlier, somebody called Dion, who I was really referring to, was Dion von Moltke, who started Blayze some years ago. Originally, it was called Racers 360, but as it evolved and more sports were added and more athletes were added in different areas, the service evolved to being called Blayze. And it's a fantastic opportunity to be able to talk to people who ordinarily you would never be able to talk to. And if you look at the list, I just looked at the motorsport area, but you've got a who's who list of racing drivers that if you're into racing, you've loved watching it for as long as I have, it's definitely a set of names of people who you've seen and can recognize doing amazing things on track. And so it's exciting. Originally, I believe, a US service. It has evolved now into other markets. And in fact, just recently, I was out at Brands Hatch cheering on a friend of mine, Alex Walker, who's a BRDC rising star, a GB4 winner, a Formula Ford winner, and somebody who's now taking part in this service to be able to offer more services just outside of the US. And so really a great opportunity to be able to take advantage of this wherever you are in the world. So let's talk about Blayze as a service. It's a really fantastic solution which all you need to do really is create an account. At that point, you nominate or choose what kind of service you want to have done. Similarly, you either get auto-assigned a coach or you can pick from the list, I believe. I'm not sure if you can always pick who you want, but in many respects, you will always find somebody who knows about racing. And then you upload your video, you upload your data, and put in the comment box exactly what you're looking to be able to achieve. I wrote in mine that I'm a second or so off the pace with the faster drivers, and could you have a look at the video and be able to find some areas where I may be able to find on-track improvement. Once you submit that and you send it off, not long afterwards, I think mine came back in less than 48 hours, I got a 20-minute video back of Dion, who was my coach, walking me through what he'd seen in the data, what he understood from my driving, and really focused on a few key areas to be able to work with. Now, in many respects, the thing that I really liked as I worked through this service, and I'll play some of the video snippets as we go through, is just how Dion broke it down and explained what he was looking at in the data and how that translated. And what I really loved was the framing or the focus on certain key areas. And in this instance, it was associated with the importance of prioritizing corners and what you do in those corners. And so to start out with, and this following video will show you, the first thing Dion does is helps me understand the areas and why he's chosen a couple of particular areas to focus on track.
Okay, So the major things that I want to work with you on here is a really clear understanding on what is my priority in any corner. What is my objective? Is it an entry speed corner? Is it an exit speed corner? Is it a balance speed corner? Something in between. Based off of that, where should my minimum speed in the corner come? And then based off of that, how do I want to manipulate the brakes to get what I want out of it? Okay. So when I review data, the first thing that I do is I sort of draw I draw a line from where our peak brake pressure comes, right? And then I go and look at are we getting the most out of the brake? So I pulled up your lateral long G earlier, and I could see, hey, your peak lateral G is in that 1.4 to 1.6 range. Peak longitudinal G, when you're at the peak brake pressure here, is in that same range. So when you do get the threshold braking, you're getting all of it, which is awesome. So now what I want to do is take a step back and think a little bit, and think about, does our peak brake pressure come in the right areas? And then relative to that, is our peak brake pressure, or does our peak brake pressure in each individual braking zone make sense, right? So as we look at this, our peak brake pressure comes here. This is, we look at the racetrack, right? It's not a straight line break. So it's about as close as you're going to get on this racetrack. And we can tell, hey, this is the type of corner where you want to maximize and condense the brake zone in and then focus on getting a good exit. So peak brake pressure here absolutely makes sense. We can now see the next brake zone, peak brake pressure, kind of makes sense to me here too. So I'm cool with these two brake zones. Now what we start to think about here is into turn one, and let me just blow this up and then we can go through here. Does the relative peak brake pressure here make sense? So we kind of see consistent brake pressure here is 44 bar, 40 bar, and we can see our consistent pressure here is 30 bar. So what is that? It's, you're 2/3 or so, 3/4. So it's like you're like a 7 pedal here. Does that make sense to me? It doesn't. This is too much brake pressure for a high speed corner. And I'm going to come back to this one. The next brake zone here is we have a pretty short brake zone here. But you see the way that you're driving this is short and aggressive. You get up to 40 bar, and then you're off. Both of these brake zones, I would much rather see a lot less brake pressure here. Okay, so let's start breaking this down.
So once you've seen this, the next thing is what kind of analysis and what can we do in that area? And I love the way that Dion walked me through, really thinking through certain aspects of the technique that I was using to be able to improve performance. Now, one of the things that I generally believe as an amateur racer is that I'm often not brave enough on the brakes. I should brake harder. I should brake later. And one of the things that was really interesting in this analysis was as much to do with brake release and braking less, more so than braking more, and really carrying that speed through the corner. And in addition, using understeer in the car to be able to effectively continue the slow of the vehicle to be able to find improvement. And this is interesting that the feedback from Dion was something that I'd heard consistently from others who I'd been coached with as well in the Formula Ford. So it's really nice to be able to see that consistency and connection with what he was saying in terms of what was happening on track. And so here's how Dion was walking through some of that. I'm not going to play everything because this video would go on forever, but it just gives you a snippet in terms of what he was thinking about.
So how do we get there? You're not going to come in and brake late and hard. This should be a really light brake application, right? This should be a brake application that looks much more like this. Soft, and you're light on the brakes, coming off the brakes. You want the car to understeer to the middle part of this corner. You want that understeer to scrub off the last few miles an hour. And then finally, as the understeer scrubs off that last few miles an hour, the car sliding. Finally, that minimum speed comes right in here. The car rotates for you. And then you've got that throttle application that gets you back to full throttle much earlier. And once again, you've now rolled in more entry speed, right? So you're not going to spend nearly as much time at your minimum speed, and your minimum speed is going to come a little bit later in the corner. So again, I'm braking lighter. So my entry speed is going to look like this. And then I can still get even a better exit because I'm not going to have that big release here. So you're faster on entry, you're delaying your throttle, the car balance is going to work better for you because the car is going to slide a little bit wider here. You're going to have a better pointed in here. Now you'll be back to flat now versus this release, and that's costing you a lot of time on the straightaway. So the central theme here is into these higher speed corners, you have a tendency, and I know the last corner isn't high speed. In fact, it's not at all. So maybe high speed isn't the right thing. It's for certain types of corners, you're trying to get the threshold brake. You're trying to brake late and hard in every corner. We don't want to do that. Yes, it makes sense here with a big straight line brake zone, and the main job is to compress the brake zone. Yes, that late hard brake zone makes sense here. But into turn one, into the final corner, it doesn't make sense at all. We want to increase speed. We don't want to shift as much weight to the front end. We want a lighter, longer brake application. We want to delay the throttle. We need to increase our entry speed to delay our initial throttle to come much closer to the apex point. So really what I want you focused on is understanding, where do I want my minimum speed in the corner to come? You know, in this corner here, my minimum speed should be in this range. You know, and yours comes actually too late because you're on and off throttle.
So I was planning on taking some of these learnings from Dion and applying them on track at the Walter Hayes Trophy that was a few weeks ago at Silverstone in November in the United Kingdom. Now, one of the things that I didn't account for is that the weather didn't cooperate. So all of the learnings and the information that I shared with Dion in the dry conditions weren't as easy to be able to translate once I got to Silverstone and it was damp and it was slick and at times it was torrential. But one of the things that I really love about Blayze, and this is something which I think is really important that we sort of focus on in many respects as to one of the key advantages of using this online service, especially if you do receive these video files of coaching, is that you will have them for as long as you need to have them to be able to learn from. One of the challenges of coaching that I've often found is that when you're in the moment and you're with the coach and you're taking loads of notes and you apply that information, oftentimes on that day things improve, but then slowly over time, something that happens to me and I'm sure it may happen to you as well, old habits sometimes kick in and you need that reminder as to what to be able to do to keep pushing yourself out of that comfort zone. Even just remembering what you talked about a few months ago is often a challenge, even if you take loads of notes. And so having that video file means that at any given time, you can go back, you can reference it, you can look at what's happening, and you can say, okay, this is really relevant, again, to this next session I'm going to do. And so, you know, you have that with you as much as you need it until you evolve to the next area and you do the next thing as you think about your racing. Now, if I were going to have some sort of concluding remarks associated with Blayze, one of the things that I actually think is really, really valuable is the fact that it's one of the most cost-effective ways of being able to get professional coaching that I've ever seen. And in many respects, the other key aspect of this as well is that you also get the opportunity to do it on a repetitive basis, really working on developing together, but at the same time, as referred to earlier, you have that log and that history of what's been taught, so you can actually continue to be able to apply those learnings when you're on track. And so for me, this is a service that I continue to enjoy. I'm going to use it as much as I can going forward. And I think it's a really important aspect of being able to find, you know, where the most cost-effective way is to find improvement on track. And that's a really interesting variable, and that's one of the other reasons that I love coaching in general. But I think in this instance, it's actually where that cost-effective nature comes in. One of the things that I've often seen, now I've raced for years and years, is that it's very easy to potentially buy a little bit of lap time. Whether you get a slightly improved engine, whether you have the opportunity of being able to bolt on new tires more often than some other people potentially have the opportunity to, or whether it's a situation whereby you may be able to lighten your car or do everything you can to be able to find that speed on track. Those are all well and good, but there's two challenges there. The first is that at some point you're going to maximize the opportunity you have of being able to find that opportunity to, you know, effectively buy that speed enhancement. And then the second thing is that that's super expensive. And so if you're somebody who goes through tires a lot to be able to have that fantastic lap time for 1 or 2 or 3 hero laps, imagine if you spent the time being able to develop your skills with a coach. You may be able to get the same lap time out of a set of tires that's 10 heat cycles old, or, you know, a set of tires that, you know, in ordinary situations, you may actually swap out or replace. And so I think that's really important, especially if you think about the fact that should you have the application of the learnings and new tires, just how much faster you could go is really interesting. So for me, the best part about the Blayze scenario is it's one of the most cost-effective ways of talking to that who's who of racing car drivers that ordinarily you would love to be able to stand next to and work with. And that's the only part of this that I think some people may or may not necessarily like, which is coaching is a very, personal sort of experience. Somebody may have worked with a coach for years, and I'm sure we're going to be able to do this with Blayze over time. But oftentimes that relationship is built, whether the person is sitting with you in the car at the same time, they're with you at the track, you have that very close relationship where you learn each other on a one-on-one basis, and you begin to be able to learn from each other and develop that skill. That's the one side of the Blayze application, because it's all virtual, that you may not necessarily have. And if you're somebody who loves that personal connection, that may be an area that you miss. That said, I would encourage everyone to give it a whirl, because if you've got a data file and you just want to send it to somebody, and as said, I think the introductory offer on this video starts out at $29 or $29 a month. You could send that over and get some insights back that you would never have thought of. Even like me, you might be fantastic at reading data, and I don't know if I'm fantastic at reading data, but I can actually do it. But at the same time, someone's going to show you different information than somebody else would. So give it a whirl. Let me know what you think in the comments box below if you have tried it or it's something you're thinking about trying. And with that, I'm going to say thanks so much for watching this video, and subscribe if you want to see more content.